Taoiseach, on your first day of leaders, I think it's quite the coincidence that you're being questioned by both the previous speaker and myself on the question of the abortion legislation. Last night's programme did expose the ongoing denial of abortion rights to a significant number of women in this country 6 years after repeal. But it was interesting that it opened up with a clip of you in Dublin Castle on that historic day when the massive yes vote was announced, and you told the crowd, under the 8th Amendment we said to women in crisis, take the boat or take the plane. Today we say take our hand. And the programme then showed how women today are still being forced to take the boat or take the plane. It's happened to hundreds of women since repeal. And the three brave women who gave their stories last night, very moving, very sad, very tragic stories, I want to commend them for doing what they did and the courage for what they did, because it has implications for the future for all women with crisis pregnancy in this country. Having been given the devastating news that their babies would not survive, much wanted babies, they're then told they can't access abortion care here in Ireland and that they would have to travel. And then the tragedy of having to leave the remains of their babies behind to come back and collect them later, or hide them under a blanket in the back of the car in case customs interrogate them. So women are still being treated as criminals for accessing basic reproductive health care. And doctors indeed, as Mary O'Shea pointed out on that show and also to the committee when she was in the Health Committee, are being intimidated by a 14-year prison sentence hanging over them like a chill factor in case they fall outside the terms of the legislation. Taoiseach, you made your political name as Minister for Health during the repeal campaign. And during the Dáil debate on the abortion legislation, you repeatedly said how important it was that the legislation be kept under review. And I quote, you said, "I'm purposely seeking a review clause in the legislation as a result of looking at other jurisdictions where legislators thought all they needed to do was pass a bill and they had dealt with the issue forever. For us, that would be a dereliction of our duty. It is appropriate that we return to the issue and make sure the legislation continues to be in line with best international practice. That is what a review clause will accomplish." And yet here, 6 years after repeal, and well over a year since Mary O'Shea's report, we're still waiting for the government to stop sitting on its hands. And it's almost a year since People Before Profit had a private member's bill passed in this House by a majority of deputies, using the Mary O'Shea report to show how a bill could be passed, and it sits in committee to abolish the 3-day wait, the 12-week limit, the 14-year prison sentence for doctors, and it would ensure that no one else is told to take the boat or the plane ever again, but it remains sitting there. TDs were given a free vote and they voted for that amendment. So it is not true to say that we are all laggards in terms of trying to make progress. But it's not good enough that the government are sitting on their hands and refusing to allow that bill to progress at committee. I've written to the Health Committee this morning asking them yet again, and I've written many times, to please progress the bill through the committee. So will you do what your predecessor Leo Varadkar did and continue to tell women with fatal fetal anomaly that with those diagnoses that they must take the boat or the plane? Or will you show a bit of courage? Mary O'Shea has said it is needed, and use your famous slogan of new energy to implement that review immediately.
Bishop, please.
Well, thanks very much to Deputy Smith. Look, the first thing I say, and I accept the sincerity of your view is well known in this House, whether people agree with it or disagree with it, and I accept that. We just shouldn't engage in revisionism. A lot has happened, an awful lot has happened. We had a constitutional ban on abortion. We had the 8th Amendment. This House wasn't empowered to legislate at all, and we went out and we all campaigned cross-party lines. It's kind of amazing to think this actually happened now, because it was a minority government. People pulled together and we brought about good societal change, in my view. Since then, we have managed to see the services in bed, and we have managed to see many, many thousands of women who would have travelled or been denied access to healthcare be able to access healthcare in this country. And you see the statistics, they're published and they're laid before this House each and every year. We've established My Options, a really important free service, non-judgmental, that provides people with information and access to counselling, but also advice on how they can access the services that are legal within this country. We've seen the number of hospitals providing the service significantly increase. We've seen the number of community providers increase and therefore geographic access across this country improve. We've prioritised from a legislative point of view the safe access zones, which I think there was a view in this House that we needed to move on. This House passed it. The Seanad has it at committee stage and hopes to conclude committee stage this evening. And we did put in place a review clause. And yes, I did that. I was there. I remember being in the committee with you and we put in place that review clause, and there was a view in the committee across party lines that we should do that. And the review has come back with many recommendations. And an awful lot of them have already been enacted in the operational space. They've been good recommendations to help improve the clinical delivery of the service. There are some recommendations that are legislative in nature, and the government, and I'm sure opposition parties, will give due consideration to them. I note your comment in relation to your own bill, and you've every right to bring it. My memory is that it passed because a majority of deputies, or certainly a large number of deputies, I don't have the figures, abstained out of respect to the fact of wanting the review to carry out itself. But factually, the bill passed the House at second stage. That is true. Your bill, and again, not to speak for you, but your bill, I think it's fair to say, would go significantly further than the review. You're very clear about wanting to abolish the 12-week limit altogether, and that's your position. It's not mine, and it's not the position that we set out when we went before the people. You've interacted with the Health Committee now, as is your right. It's a matter for the Health Committee to decide how it wishes to proceed with that request, but I've outlined very clearly what the government intends to do. Pass the Safe Access Zone legislation, ensure that these services are provided in the 19 hospitals, implement the operational recommendations, and engage with the Minister for Health at the Cabinet Committee on Health on the legislative recommendations.
Bríd Smith.
I think it's fair to frame the history of what happened to the bill as somehow a minority voting for it. Only about 9 deputies abstained that day. So it's not like a huge amount of deputies abstained. I just want to pick up on a few things you say. The 28-day limit, which I think is really the crucial thing about how fatal fetal anomalies are treated, and to stop the harrowing and tragic testimonies we saw last night. The 28-day limit on when doctors can say there's need of a termination in a fatal fetal anomaly, that was only added after the referendum. It was not in the Heads Bill. So people did not vote for that. And the 3-day limit was never discussed, or the 3-day wait and the repeat visit was never discussed by the Citizens' Assembly or by the Joint Oireachtas Committee. That was put in by government afterwards to try and bring some of your leading members on a journey. It was never discussed by us. And also on the programme last night was the question of rogue agencies, and I'd like you to address this in your comeback, because in 2016, 8 years ago, you yourself, after a similar investigation was revealed in the Irish version of the Times, you claimed you were sickened by those claims and you vowed to regulate rogue agencies. 8 years later, it's still free to operate. So I repeat my contention, you're sitting on your hands.
Your contention, I obviously don't agree with you. Even the 3-day wait period has seen clarification in how it operates since the COVID pandemic. That used to be 2 in-person visits. It's now not that case. That was something that came about during COVID that was deemed to work well in the health service and clinically well, and was therefore embedded. So I'm not dismissing lots of the points that have been made in this House, but I'm outlining the process that the government will go through. But also, just in relation to rogue crisis pregnancy agencies, I was sickened and I am sickened, but that doesn't, you try and imply that I did nothing about it. We set up my options. For the first time in the history of the state, we actually now have a state service, free phone, and I'd encourage people to make that known, free phone, non-judgmental, available to people, that is providing massive support and directing people to appropriate and safe services. I also, Deputy Smith, I also went further than that, because elections do sometimes interrupt people's tenure of service. But I did also in 2019, bring about regulations to designate the professions of counsellor and psychotherapist under the Health and Social Care Professionals Act. I did establish the Counsellor and Psychotherapist Registration Board. I appointed it in February 2019. They held their first meeting in May 2019, and I think everybody knows the pressure the Department of Health has been under in relation to COVID pandemics and the like since, so a lot has happened.
Deputy Joan Collins.